What sports were
We put on the first team of the senior coach in the next grade because I had a track record for the state of Michigan at that time.
Now, what were your friends like? Did you have a bunch of friends in football? What was this experience like?
Yeah, we had, I guess your friends were sort of clans. We had a bunch of guys we played with all the time. Other fellows that were different. But yeah, we all had our own gang that we stayed with and played. Mostly it was guys who played ball with that I stayed with.
Who was your best friend?
Back in them days, in high school, I guess Louis Fridge would have been my best friend. Robert Barnes was a friend from kindergarten through my 10th grade of school when I left school.
What did you guys do together? What kind of activities did you guys do, in and out of school?
Hunting and fishing, work that we done, not different work, farm work, onion fields.
Now, did you guys ever play any pranks on each other?
Not much, no. I worked in the service station for Nash Packard Hudson agency in Greenwood.
And what year in school were you in at that time?
I was in the ninth grade.
Ninth grade? What was your favorite school subject?
I never really could say I had a favorite because I was very poor in school. I never cared for school except for sports.
And out of all the sports, which one was your favorite?
Football.
Football?
Yeah.
Remember any games that stick out in your mind?
Oh yeah, I remember a lot of them. I made the last 10th grade of school I was put in a grade again. I think we were playing Belgium, Michigan. And I made 3 runs that game for over 90 yards, but I never made a touchdown.
Did your parents attend the games?
No.
Did they go to the sports activities?
My parents never attended it. But I didn't care about it. I was in the school band. We played trombone.
What about track?
I had a very good 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade. I ran track. In the 8th grade, in junior high school, I was put on the senior varsity, which wasn't supposed to be, but I was because I could run so fast. I needed the points to get the conference championship.
How fast could you run? Did you ever set any records? Ever win
To my
any medals?
knowledge, I did, but to prove it, I couldn't. But they said I had the state record of the 100-yard dash at 9.83 seconds. I could run that 100 yards in full football game.
What other sports were you involved in?
Basketball, I played a lot of second team basketball. We put on the first team in the end of the 9th grade.
What about the guys you played with? Any of them stick out in your mind?
No, not too much, no. Just it seemed to be the same gang you had in high school. You chummed with them, buddies, but they were in basketball, track, and football.
Now, you made it to your sophomore year of high school.
I finished the sophomore year.
Now, what did you do in the school council?
I was president of the student council.
What kind of activities did you do?
I done none. I made sure that I didn't get involved other than my title as president. I didn't give any speeches. I got out of them any way I could. And in my sophomore year, I left school in the mid-semesters and went to Florida. And I went with 2 other boys that were seniors. One stayed in Florida and one came back, and I came back and we went back to school.
Now, why did you go to Florida?
I can't answer that. I never knew to this day when I went. They asked me when I'm going on a trip, but I went.
Who were they?
Harold Green and Alan Cook.
How do you get there?
Both of them retired from the United States Navy. We had a 36 Ford Coupe. We drove down there, $19.25.
What did you do when you got there?
We went to a lady's home. Her name was Mrs. Oh, I can't remember her name. It was Alan Cook's aunt. And she was the commission for the war where we were at Hollywood, Florida. And she took us in. and I worked the job for Senator Claude Pepper. Came to his house for 25 cents an hour.
Now, did your parents know where you went?
Yes, they found out. They didn't know where we went, but they found this lady called the minute we got there and told them where we were.
Now, what did your parents have to say about that?
They never said anything to me, but the principal of the school did. He called me and said if I'd come home, everything would be forgotten, and it was just like nothing happened. Well, I did that, and he had told me a fib because I was made ineligible for the rest of the year. I couldn't pay any more ball, and that's when I quit school. I did get out of the sophomore year. I graduated that year. But that year, at 15 years old, I went to the United States Navy.
Now, where were you on December 7th, 1941?
I was laying on the floor of a house at 920 South Franklin Street, Greenville, Michigan, listening to the Atwater Kent radio. My dad and my mother, Franklin, Delaware, and Louisville, and out over to this thing.
How old were you at this time?
15.
How did you feel about that?
I went to the service directly, not as soon as I could. I was 14 when that happened. I went in when I was 15.
But when you were on the floor and you first made the announcement over the radio, how did you feel? What was your initial reaction?
I
What
wanted
did your
to go in
parents
the
say?
service right away, but I couldn't.
What did your parents say?
Well, my dad went down and enlisted, but he was turned down because he was drinking heavily.
What did your mom say about it? Was she
Nothing.
worried? Was she scared?
Oh, my mother was petrified, sure. And when I did go in the service, she had a nervous breakdown because I was so young and like that.
How did you join the service that young?
I went to a place in Grand Rapids, Michigan called Reed's Lake. It's the United States Naval Reserve Army. And I passed all my tests, got all my papers. This chief petty officer said, if your dad will sign these, he said, I'll send you off. I said, okay. So I took him home to my dad. At that time, him and I didn't have a very good relationship. And he got pretty mad. He said, I'm going to sign these papers. He said, I want you to know they put me in jail for doing this. We went to trial with Notary Republic, and he signed. I took him back to Reed's Lake, figuring I'd be in the Navy, but I'd have maybe a month before they called me up. And the man I gave the paper to, all signed with a Notary Republic seal. He said, well, he said, son, you're in the Navy. I said, when do I leave? He said, tomorrow morning at 4 o'clock.
Now, why did you choose the Navy?
Because my father was in the Navy. He also enlisted at the age of 15, same day.
For World War I?
World War I.
What did you do that last night home?
Well, I think it all happened so fast that I didn't do anything. It just, after I got my papers all signed up, it was going towards dark, and I just went home, packed the bag, and that morning my dad and mother took me downtown, and I got on a station wagon that took us to Detroit, Michigan.
Where did you go from there? Was that boot camp?
No, Detroit was what they call an indoctrination center. There was probably thousands of men in it. We all lined up, raised our hands, swore allegiance to the United States of America, and enlisted in the service. Then I was put on a train and sent to Great Lakes, Chicago, Illinois. And on the trip, we stopped in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which was my hometown at that time. And I couldn't get off the train.
Why couldn't you get off the train?
They wouldn't allow it. You were in the service. They were going to show you who's boss. They run the show. What do you want me to do?
So what did you do from there?
I stayed on the train. We went to Chicago, Illinois. I was put in the company 485, Camp Dewey of Chicago, Illinois. They said I would be in detention camp for 6 weeks, where I would be shipped out to some different organization. You never knew where. Instead of 6 weeks, I was only there 3 weeks. Because they were so desperate for men, they shipped us out at the end of the 3rd week. During that time, I was standing watch at the barracks door, and I seen two officers coming towards me that I thought I knew them. When they got there, they were my two high school coaches that I had in Greenville High School. And they had been drafted into the Navy. And they come and they said, we're going to get you out. I said, I don't want to. And I said, we're going to take you around, show you some things. They got me out of detention camp, took me around Chicago to Northwestern University, several others. They got it all done. They said, now, we're doing this for a reason, Phil. I said, what's that? He says, you have a scholarship, 4 years at the University of Michigan, just to go down there and run track. They said, it's your decision. You stay in the Navy, and we won't say a word, or we'll send you home tonight. Or we might stay in the service. That was the end of it.
What were your coaches' names?
George Oxted and Jake Ferris. Greenville, Michigan.
What was your first night like?
The whole very, very treacherous. We had to string and sleep in hammocks. They were probably 4 feet off the floor. And it was hard to get them open and get in them, and they'd roll and swing and you'd fall out. I think the first 3 nights I never closed my eyes.
Now, where was this at? In detention camp still?
Detention in Great Lakes, Illinois. My drill sergeant, my drill master at that time was Mr. Jack Dempsey, who was the world's leading boxer, world champion.
Now, back to your first night there. How did you wake up in the morning? What did your daily schedule become like?
Well, at 4 o'clock in the morning, they got you up, lined you up, mustered you in, you had to be shaved, shoes polished, hair combed, in uniform of the day, whatever they chose. And then they go out and drill on the big drill field. And then in the afternoon, you'd be assigned different duties you had to do.
Now, what kind of drills would you do? Did you eat breakfast first?
Oh, yeah, you know, they had great food, breakfast, cook and chow line.
What'd you eat?
Oh, every day was different. They had week for week was the same food. But we had real good food, I think. I really don't remember now.
What kind of drills did you go through?
Oh, just marching, manual arm. And I played in the bugle corps for a while, done the bugle corps.
What about friends? Did you make friends easily?
I left Grand Rapids with a man called Rasmus, Stan Rasmus. I was 15, he was 21. And in boot camp, when we got through our detention camp, we'd all taken IT test. Out of 500 men, 3 men passed the IT test. He was one of them, and he went to radio school, where I was chosen with 50 men to the United States Navy Armed Guard in Little Creek, Virginia.
Now, during this time at boot camp, what were the other men like? Did you make friends with all of them?
No.
Did you guys talk to each other?
Oh, you talk, but you never made friends because you weren't together.
So where did you go after Fort Dewey?
After Camp Dewey, I went to Little Creek, Virginia, Naval Armed Guard Center, Gunnery School.
Now, where did you finish boot camp? Did you have graduation?
Yeah, well, not where anybody attended. Just lined you up, took your picture, and you were done.
What camp was that at?
Same thing.
Fort Dewey?
Camp Dewey.
How did you feel? Was it a big honor?
No, just another experience.
They just marched you through?
Yeah, and you're ready to go on.
Now, when you went to Little Creek, Virginia, what did you do there?
Little Creek, Virginia, I was trained on all types of weapons. 4-inch 50 guns, 40 millimeter guns, 20 millimeter guns, 30 caliber guns, 45 sidearms, any type of ammo they had.
Did they send you over on a train?
We went there on a train from Great Lakes to Little Creek, Virginia.
What was it like there? What were your barracks like?
Very clean, very plain. And you march back and forth to chow hall, do your duties. And after the second week, I was put aboard the battle of the gunboat USS Paducah. And I sailed on that on the Chesapeake Bay for gunnery practice.
What was that time period like? What did you do every day? Did you get up? Did you do drills?
You know, you awoke by a bugle call. You went to chow. You had to shower and shave every morning, whether you needed it or not. You dressed in the uniform of the day. You went to the chow hall and had your breakfast or dinner, whatever it was. Then you reported back to your company. When you fell in, they called you by name. You answered in the roll call, and they'd take you different crews to different guns where you weren't normal guns.
What different types of guns? What were they like?
You had cannons, called a 4-inch 50, World War I gun off the battlefields and stuff they use no more. The antique, they were put on merchant ships. And that's what the armed guard was saying, all the merchant vessels in the United States and any other country that needed army. I sail on Panamanian flag, on the United States flag, none of the Norwegian flag.
How long were you there? 3
weeks. When I was shipped out of there, I was given a ticket to report the 52nd and 1st Avenue in Brooklyn, New York.
How'd you get there?
Any way I could. But I was given 6 days delay orders to get there. So I went home to Michigan. I was home overnight, and they put me on a train back to Brooklyn, New York.
What'd you do when you were home that night?
I just see my mom and my dad and talk with them, and I was on my way.
Do you remember anything they said to you?
Well, I don't really just like you to pay for it. Mostly my mother and my father.
What'd you do your first night in Brooklyn?
When we went into Brooklyn, there were thousands and thousands of men. This was a huge wharf. It extended for 3-4 miles from the street out into the water, where they drive trucks out, load boats in, but they made a barracks out of it. The bunks were 6 high, from the bottom bunk up, 6 of them, and there was probably well over 10,000 men in that building. And the only thing you could do was lay in that bunk or go to the bathroom, otherwise you couldn't leave your bunk. And you were there until you were called by name, and they called it the flying bridge. When you went to the flying bridge, you were assigned to a ship.
How long were you in Brooklyn?
No, just a couple days.
How'd they call you up?
You always returned to Brooklyn. Every ship you were on, you always returned to Brooklyn. You got to the armed guard center. They called me up in a draft, the first draft of 21 men. Now, these are all men you never knew, you never seen.
How did you get the message?
Over loudspeakers, over intercom, they call your name. Prentice, Brockschmidt, report to the flying group. You go up there and you meet all new men you've never seen before. And then they load your gear and everything, away you go.
What kind of gear did you have?
Sea bag and hammocks. All your gear, your clothing was in a sea bag, and your bed, a hammock, and the mattress was wrapped around it and carried it on your back. 120 pounds. And you took every bit of it.
Where did you go from there?
I went to Perth Amboy, New Jersey, where I went aboard the NP, Florida, a Texas oil tanker.
How did you get there?
By truck.
What type of truck?
They go Ford stick truck. It's loaded from the back end. Went through the Holland Town over to New Jersey, to Perth Amboy, out the dock to the oil field. When I first seen this ship, I said, good Lord, it must be a battleship, because I've never seen a ship in my life. It was an oil tank.
What did you do that first night?
Tried to get some sleep and couldn't. By midnight we left. I was called at midnight to go and watch. My first watch duty was a crow's nest, at least 80 feet above that ship.
What did you do that night?
I crawled up in that crow's nest and walked the hand ladder up. I got up and I got in all armor piercing. You got about a 4-inch slit where you could look out through. And they started to go out in the ocean.
Was it the first time you were on a ship?
First time I'd ever been on a boat, ship, or anything. And I started getting seasick. And And in this crow's nest you're in, your armor plating all around, you set where you look out, there's about 4 inches all the way around. And when I started getting sick, I had to heave out that 4 inches, and it couldn't do it. So it all came inside when I was standing, you couldn't set. And then when I put my 4 hours in, and the guy come up to relieve me, and he could smell that I was ill, and he refused to relieve me, so I was 8 hours. And I was deathly sick for that thing. I had a hard time even getting back down.
How were you finally relieved?
The guy come up and they brought water up, washed it down, and relieved me and got me out of there. But I never went back up again. I was getting ready to breathe.
What did you do when you got down? Were you allowed to go
Went
to
to
sleep?
bed.
How long were you on the ship?
6 months.
What did you do from there? Where'd you go?
We left Perth Amboy, New Jersey to Halifax, Nova Scotia.
What was life like on the ship? Was it cramped? Did you meet people?
Well, it was cramped. You had 12 men to we call them forecastles, room. But it was all right. We had our own showers. And we had our own mess hall. I ate in the CPO's mess. It was like a captain's dining room. And we ate very good aboard the ship.
Do you remember any of those men?
Do I remember? I remember all of them.
Who were they? Tell me about them.
Well, I can't tell you about them. Cadman of Beard out of Wyandotte, Michigan. Wayne Raskin, my special friend out of Omar, West Virginia. He was on his 2nd ship. Him and I were very good friends. George Archambault out of Maryland. Kavanaugh out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Abe Butler out of Canton, Ohio. Alabama Blackwell out of Alabama. Several other guys I don't remember.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 15 years old.
15 years old. What did you do every day aboard the ship?
I was a gunner. You trained on the guns. You had a certain gun to take care of, to keep clean, keep the ammo good. When we got hot climate, they had to water the ammo to keep it from exploding. When you got in cold and icy weather, you had to keep it all clean of ice. You had to keep the gun functioning. Every man had a gun crew that they were assigned to.
What type of gun did you have?
I was on a 3-inch 50 on the bow for a while, then I was put on a 12mm anti-aircraft gun.
When was the first time you met anybody else in the ocean?
How do you mean?
Did you go off in a convoy?
Yeah, in Halifax, that's why we went there. We made convoys. Probably, I don't know, 30 to 60 ships when we left Halifax.
All United States?
No, every country of the world. Maybe like 2 or 3 out of the United States.
How long did it take you to get to Halifax?
It took us, let's see, from New York to Halifax, I met maybe 3-4 days.
Were there any other ships?
Oh, yeah. Some thousands of them all anchored out. But when you made convoys, they made convoys by the amount of speed that a ship could do. In other words, if you were in a 6-knot ship, that's what you were in a convoy with. If you were in a 10 or 20 knot, that's a convoy you went with. So they were all different. Oil tankers were all on the right rear corner of a convoy. It's called Coffin Corner. And that's where the German subtypes at first, because they knew all the ports to the side.
And is that the type of ship you were in?
Yes, I love all the Texas oil tanker out of Port Arthur.
Did you come into contact with the enemy on your way over?
Yes, we did. Yeah. I lost that ship.
What ship?
The Florida. She went to the bottom.
Tell me about that day, when you first came into contact with the enemy.
Well, you don't even know what's happening. You just sail along and all of a sudden, bang, it explodes. The torpedo hits you. It starts leaking water and oil and gas. And they start listing, they start tipping over. And we have lifeboats, life rafts. You grab a hold of one and over you go.
Now, were you hit by a U-boat?
A torpedo from a U-boat.
Was this on your first trip over?
First trip out.
And this was the first action you'd seen?
Yeah. You never seen the U-boat. All you've seen is the torpedo.
What did you do? How did you get out? Where were you when it occurred?
I was on the forward gun, 3-inch 50, and we were knocked off. went over the side, I grabbed a hold of the life raft, got on that, and within a few minutes I was picked up by an English destroyer, a four-stacking destroyer. And they got so many of us they couldn't handle us, they put us on another tanker going on into Russia.
What was that ship you got picked up by?
I don't remember the name.
Did you stay with them?
No. The second ship? No. We got hit on that one. And we just jumped off of that. We didn't even go down, but we got off. And we were picked up again by the SO Standard tanker.
So immediately after being torpedoed off of one ship, you boarded another and was hit.
Yep.
Where were you on the ship when you were hit by a torpedo on the second ship?
Oh, I was just midship. We were just standing there because we were not part of the crew. We were just manually picked up. And the orders at that time was not to pick up anybody. Not to stop or pick up anybody. But they did. So,
And you just jumped off?
yeah.
Was the water freezing?
About 40 below zero when we were in the water.
How long were you in the water?
Very, very short time before I was picked up. Because I figured 3 minutes you were short.
Who picked you up?
Well, at first I was picked up by a destroyer out of England, and the second time by another oil tanker.
A United States oil tanker?
No, they were all foreign. I don't even know what country they were. Because all the men were mixed. You might have 20, 30 nationalities on one ship. They were merchant ships. They were not navy ships.
What happened from there?
We went on into Murmansk, Russia, in Archangel, where we were docked, and the ship I was on, we got rid of its cargo.
Well,
go ahead.
what was the mission of this trip?
To deliver oil and gas to the Russians for the fight the second front of World War II. They were fighting the Germans out of Russia. Everything they had came out of the United States.
What was it like docking there? What happened when you went in?
We were bombed every day and every night. We were in there about 3.5 days because they bombed us every night. And the people were very, very ugly. They didn't want to talk to you or have anything to do with you. And it was very unpleasant and cold, very cold.
Now, when you first went into Russia, though, did you transfer to a different ship?
No, I stayed on that one and I came back into the United States on that.
What was your daily routine like on that ship?
Nothing. We had nothing to do because we weren't a member of the crew. We were just a passenger. So all I had to do was eat and sleep.
What did you do when you went into Russia? Did you dock?
Yeah, we docked, and then they hooked lines up to your ship to take the oil and the gas off. And they have what they call a pump room. You pump that all ashore. As soon as you're empty, well, then you fill with seawater and you go back out to sea.
Did you ever get off the ship?
Oh yeah, we went back to Brooklyn, New York. I got off that ship, was put back in the Armed Guard Center.
At Russia?
No, in Brooklyn, New York.
Yes, but when you were in Russia still, in
Oh,
Murmansk,
no.
Russia, when you docked, did
No,
you ever get off?
No, we just got off on the dock, that's all we did. We didn't go in.
What were the other men like on the ship?
Well, they were all, the gun crew was all American sailors, but the merchant marine men were from every country of the world. You never know who they were, what they were.
Did you make any friends?
No, I didn't make any. Just the gun crew.
What time did you get up in the day?
No, I usually got up whenever. I can't really tell you now, I don't remember. Usually you were all up by 6 going. And the guys that stood watch, they got up all different times.
You had no duty during these days?
Not after I lost my own ship, I didn't. No. I had no duty. We did help when we got under attack by aircraft. We all helped up the gun, passing ammunition, and filling up water jackets for the barrels or whatever you had to do.
Were you scared?
I guess we were, but I think we didn't realize it. I don't remember being scared. I was scared over a torpedo. That scared the life out of me. When they were bombing us, I wasn't scared because they weren't hitting anything. There were probably 50, 60 ships, and I never hit one.
Were they German aircrafts that were bombing you?
Yeah, from Germany and most of them out of Norway. The Norway had been taken over by the Germans. And that was a big German base in Norway. And that was a very short distance into Russia from Norway.
How many days did you spend docked in Murmansk, Russia?
About 3.5. And I left. I think it was the SO Standard was the name of it.
Where did you go to?
Brooklyn, New York.
What was the purpose of going back?
Well, every ship, when you got rid of your cargo, you had to come back to the United States to get a new cargo. But when we got back, we were taking off. You never made 2 trips on the same ship. Every time you came in, they took the gun crew off, and they put a new crew on.
What was the, let me take you back a little bit. What was the trip home like? Did you run into any trouble? Did you run into any U-boats?
No, we had no trouble at all coming home, but remember, you had no cargoes. All the ships were empty. The only ones they cared about was the ones with the cargo going up. They wanted that cargo. I can't tell you how many hundreds and hundreds of ships are at the bottom, full of ammunition, steel, tanks, airplanes, all kinds of fuel went down. They claim there's 800 ships went down the first year off the coast of the United States.
How many days did it take you to return?
Oh, God, I don't remember it now. It seemed like it took us quite a while getting back, like 45 days or something. I really don't remember. A long time ago.
How many days did it take you getting to Murmansk, Russia from Brooklyn?
Well, we left Brooklyn and went to Halifax. We stayed there quite a long time. And I'd say another 30 to 40 days with the Russian Russia.
Now let me bring you back a little bit. After you'd left Murmansk, Russia, and you were being bombed by the Germans, how many days did it take you to go back after your initial first visit?
When we went into Russia, when we left there, I would imagine it took 45 days to get back to the United States.
And you had no duties as a crew person then?
I had nothing. No.
What would you do every day?
I could do anything I wanted. You done your laundry, you helped with the guns, you'd help a gun crew member, you'd do anything they wanted you to do, you'd do it. But we had no assigned duties because I wasn't a member of that ship.
What was life like on the ship?
Life's very, very close with people, very, on these oil tankers and that, very dirty. You had a hard time keeping yourself clean and your clothes clean because you turn on the water and oil would come right out with the water because the pipes were all rusted and messed up. So you had a hard time. And after you were out for so long, the food got real bad because they never have enough food to make a whole trip.
Where did you go back to? Back to Brooklyn?
Brooklyn, New York was the Armed Guard Center. You always went there and left from there.
Now when you got back, where did you go?
I went to the Armed Guard Center, right back in the bunks, and sat there and waited for them to call me again.
How many days did that take?
Took about a week. We had liberty every night. We could go to Times Square and do whatever we wanted to.
What did you do with your time off?
Chase women and girls.
Grandpa.
Well, you asked me. Done a lot of drinking. I remember we're in a strange place. We hit all the bars in Times Square. Anywhere.
Who'd you go with?
All guys in my gun crew. I was with a fellow by the name of Wayne Rasnick. Him and I were the best of friends. We were together all the time. He was from Omar, West Virginia.
You had a whole week off.
Well,
did you?
Nights. You didn't have a week off. You reported back every morning. You had to be to duty. And then after a week, they called us for another gun crew. And I went out with, I think there were 21 men we went out. Went out on the SS Terrain with a Panamanian oil tanker.
What was your mission?
There was no mission. It was just transport fluid, oil, gas to the troops.
Where?
Well, we loaded up and we started for Rio De Janeiro. We loaded in Aruba. And after we got loaded and we started out, they called it to the invasion of North Africa. And they said they needed our oil. And the way this happened, we were in convoy. And when we got to Recife, Brazil, we started to go in, and the cruiser Milwaukee and the Marblehead pulled alongside my ship. And they had what they call a bullhorn. They called to the captain to proceed to the Rock of Gibraltar, alone. There would be no convoy. And we were to fly the Union Jack, which means you're in the United States Navy fleet. So they took over the ship and its cargo. And we went on over to the Rock of Gibraltar. And when we got there, here at anchor laid the Queen Mary, but she was out of fuel. Thousands and thousands of men aboard, going in the invasion of North Africa. So they took every bit of oil we had. Then we returned back to Brooklyn.
Now, during this trip, what ship were you on?
Yes, SS Terrain.
Did you cross the equator?
Yeah, I went across the equator, got initiated.
Now, what is that called?
Father Neptune's court.
What happened that day?
And that day, I got my butt beat good. They cut your hair and they shave your head, and take your clothes off, and grease you up good with old black grease. And then they make you climb up a ladder through a wind chute. Well, they're soaking you down with salt water all the time. They're smacking you with paddles. When you get to the other end of the chute, you go to get out, you don't know it, but you went right over the side, right in the ocean. And I'm telling you, that was a 60-foot drop. When you hit the ocean, you knew it.
Did they do this with everyone?
Every man across the equator that hadn't done it before.
Did they call you, did they have a certain name they called you?
No. They give you a diploma. I still have it somewhere. When I crossed the 42-48 longitude by Captain Atkey, he was the master of the ship. And I was signed into the, I forget what they call it, into the Father Neptune court.
Now, how did it all come about? Did they tell everybody to come up on top, get on the main deck?
The ship?
Yeah.
Well, they all knew where they were at, what they were doing. Every man that ever went across the equator got initiated.
So they rounded you up?
So, no, they just called you out. You knew you were going to get it.
Were you scared?
No, because they didn't hurt them. No, just the thing you went through.
Now, you said they put you through the chute and you fall right off the side of the boat into the ocean.
Yeah, right in the ocean. Goodbye.
How'd you get back on board?
Oh, you got a little rope ladder. You swim to and crawl back up.
I bet you were relieved when you were done.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad it was over with. Then you just went back on duty and done your thing.
But how long did the whole event take?
No, I don't know, a couple hours.
Was it exciting? What did you feel about
Yeah,
this?
it was.
Were you proud?
I was honored that I was amongst the men that had went over the equator and done our job. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Now, where did you go from there?
From there, I went on to Rio. From Rio, we went on the invasion of North Africa.
During this time, did you see any U-boats?
No.
Were you bothered by any ships?
Yeah, we were bothered by U-boats, but we never seen them. On the way back, we seen the U-boat, but the U-boat gave up at the surface. It came to the surface, all German sailors. And they had no food, water, ammunition, they just gave up. And the U-boat was towed into Bahia, Brazil.
By your ship?
No, a Navy ship, destroyer. When you're on a tanker, it's a different type of a boat. It's all tanks, and there's very little rigging on it.
What did you do when you got to Rio?
Well, we all had liberty in Rio. I went up to Sugarloaf Mountain. It was on the biggest crucifix in the world. It's on top of the mountain in Rio De Janeiro. And we ended up in the Florida bar in Rio with the crew. I was with some sailors and a bunch of mercenaries.
What'd you do?
Got drunk.
What'd you drink?
Whiskey, rum and coke.
What were the other men? Who were they?
I can't remember names anymore. I got a picture of them at home. I can't tell you. Wayne and I were always together. Even him and I were there.
During this time, did you still have contact with your parents? Were you able to write to them at all?
No. You could write, but every letter they wrote, they just cut out what they didn't want you to. When my mother did a letter, she could look right through all the holes and they cut out it. They didn't know where I was at or what I was doing.
Where did you go from here?
Back to Brooklyn, New York. And we all go back in there and get your bunk. You wait for a call.
How many days did it take this time?
It took quite a while. I think I was there a couple of weeks, 3 weeks.
What did you do during that time?
Nothing. You can't do anything. You go to Liberty every night. You go downtown.
Young man in New York City, you must have had a lot of fun.
Oh, we had a great time. Can't tell you anything. People like that. I went one time to the State Door Canteen. And I was sitting in there and this gal was singing. Teresa Brewer. She got down on her song. She come over to our table and she said, "You the youngest guy here?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Would you take me home?" I said, "Sure." So we went out and got in a cab. I took her home. She said, "Thank you." She paid the cab fare and I went back to the State Door Canteen. And otherwise you were looking for girls the same age or whatever. We'd go in every bar. And then we got so we all stayed at a bar called Cedar Tavern in Brooklyn, New York. And all us guys would sign in with a bartender and he'd tell us if one of the guys we used to know was back, if he was on the ship and where they were. So he kept track of all of it. He painted on the wall in his tavern. But that all come to an end, that trip. As we were in an armed guard center, I was transferred with 50 men. Well, that was unheard of in the gun crew. That was way more than you'd ever heard of. A couple of weeks later, I found out I was in the United States Navy Air Corps.
Now, you were just automatically transferred? Did you still stay in the same barracks?
No. I went to Brunswick, Maine. I was sent up around training. Got out of Brunswick, Maine. They put us in the barracks. And every morning we'd muster down to the hangar with all the airplanes.
Just a minute. Now, how did you find out you were transferred over?
Well, after you got to the air station, you knew you weren't going aboard a ship. The place full of airplanes.
No, back to Brooklyn.
You didn't know.
Back to Brooklyn.
You didn't know.
Were you called up thinking you were going to go back on another ship?
Yes, ma'am. That's what we all thought.
And where did they send you from there?
From there, to Brunswick, Maine.
How'd you get there?
By a train.
By train? And when you first got there, where did you go?
To the barracks or the Naval Air Station.
What'd you think about that? Did you think they made a mistake?
Yeah, we thought we were all up there waiting for a ship because you're right by Portland, where the ocean is. There's hundreds and hundreds of ships out there. Bath, Maine was where they made all the destroyers for the fleet for the United States. So we knew we were all seamen. We were all waiting for a ship. None of us carried a raid. We were all first-class seamen.
Now, how did you first know that you weren't going on board another ship?
Well, every morning they'd call us out of this barrack and we'd go to the airplane hangar and we'd muster in. And they'd call you by name. And then they'd say, well, one morning I remember they asked for anybody who would like to be a carpenter. And I thought, well, that'd be a good job. I'm for that. So I stepped forward and another guy next to me, he did. And they had boxes there that were, I don't know how big they were. Airplane engines were shipped all over the world. And they asked me how long it'd take me to build that. I said, oh, about 3 days. And they asked the other guy, he said, oh, I can get it done in a day. They said, well, you're the carpenter. So I just kept falling in every morning.
What were the barracks like there?
We had nice barracks. We had to make our own lockers, keep the showers clean, make our beds.
What was the food like?
We ate in a mess hall with all the rest of the guys. Same food you get everywhere. It was good food.
What was the daily routine?
Just mustering in that barracks and going back to whatever job they gave me.
What kind of jobs did you do?
Mine was, I was making lockers in the berth. That's all I had to do, make wooden lockers, put them all together, stand them up. The guys put their clothes in.
Did you do any drills during this time? Any training
No,
activities?
Once you were in the service, you didn't do much drill work after that. You see, when we got there, we were all veteran seamen. I'd had 2 years at sea by this time. These other guys had never been at sea. They were in the Air Corps. So one morning we all mustered, and we got a little antsy with the guy, the chief. And he said, "Look, you guys," he said, "I don't know what you think you're doing up there." And I stepped forward and I said, "Well, we're waiting for a ship. We're all gunners." He laughed. He said, "No, no," he said, "you're wrong." He said, "You're in the Air Corps now. You've been transferred." And none of us liked it. We didn't want no part of it. But we were there. There was nothing to do about it.
So what were you assigned to?
Well, I stayed there. And that night, we went back to the barracks. There was a man there by the name of Weidman, something. And I noticed he was packing all his bags. I slept on the bottom bunk and he was on the top bunk. He was a first-class aviation ordnance. And I said, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm being discharged." He says, "I've lost my hearing." He said, "I've been flying so much I lost my eardrums." And he said, "The discharge, give me a medical discharge." He said, "What are you doing here?" I told him our experience. He said, "Well, tomorrow," he said, "when you muster in down there, tell him you want to be an ordnance man." I said, "Okay." So that morning, when I mustered in, I told him, they said, asked me what we're doing. I said, "I want to be an ordnance striker." He said, "Step out of line." And I did, and they put me in the ordnance shack.
Stop it. Okay, so what happened when you volunteered?
When I volunteered, they call it a striker. I'm a seaman without a rate, so I go into the ordnance shack as a striker. In this squadron, in any squadron, an ordnanceman is a man of gunnery, bombs, bomb sights, all different things. But in this squadron, we towed targets for the fleet. We had cable targets 40, 50 feet long. We had drones, airplane drones, all types of things that we towed behind airplanes. Well, when I went in as an ordnance striker, they showed me all about the reels. They taught me how to splice cable, 1/8 cable, 3/32 cable, how to splice it together when you're up in the air, how to repair the tow reels, how to fold the targets so you could throw them out of the airplane. And the third day I was in there, they told me to go to the parachute loft and get a parachute. And I said, "What the hell I want to do that for?" And I said, "Well, you're going up on your first flight with this guy here." So I said, "Okay, I thought this was a pretty good deal. I was going to go up in the air. I'd never been up, you know." So I went down to the parachute loft. I told him I was so-and-so a striker. Fine, he said, "Here's your chute." He showed me how to put the harness on, but he never showed me how to put the parachute on. So I grabbed the parachute, and there was a red lever on it. So I thought, well, that's what you carry it by. So I grabbed a hold of that, and he started screaming at me, "Man, don't do that." I said, "Why?" He said, "That's a ripcord." He said, "It'll fly open." He said, "You carry it by the back where them buckles are." I said, "What are they for?" He said, "Well," he said, that harness you put on, when you got to jump, you have to snap that parachute on. He said, "When you do," he said, "you grab that ripcord. When you jump," he said, "you throw your head back, because that parachute comes out and knock you out cold." I said, "Man, I don't think I like this." You had to have the harness on to get in the airplane. So I done that. I got in with a guy by the name of Brockschmidt. He was a second-class aviation ordnance. And he taught me that week how to tow targets. We were towing for battleships, destroyers, what they call task force. They would start at Brunswick, Maine, and they would go all the way through the Panama Canal. Well, every night I'd be land-based. I'd go from...
Just a second. Now, what was your first flight like? Your first time up in the airplane?
With somebody or alone?
With somebody.
It was very calm and very boring, really. You got up there, you put a target out, you towed it, and you might tow for 2 or 3 hours and nothing happened. So you'd cut it off and bring the cable and go home. The first time they sent me alone, it wasn't quite like that.
Now, were you in the back of the plane?
Yeah, you're in the back, always in the back. So you have to throw the target out the back. Because as an airplane, there's a slipstream that comes around from the engine. And that slipstream comes around and comes back in. Well, if it catches that target, it brings you right back around the airplane. You can't have that happen. So I went with him, I guess, a week. We towed different targets. And after that week, one morning I looked at the board and I'm scheduled to go alone by myself. But instead of being in a real nice aircraft like him and I'd been in, I got an old beater they call the J2F5. It was a 2-wing, open cockpit, pontoon airplane. So I went out there and I looked at it, well, the tow reel was down in the pontoon. And I see the tow reel, and I see the target coming. Well, it ain't too bad, I can handle it. So the way we go, there was the pilot, the radio man, and me. They're up in top in the cockpits, I'm down below in the pontoon. So we get out there, and he told me to stand by to put my target up. Well, there was a big hatch, big round like a manhole cover in that bottom of that pontoon. And I had to release that. Well, when I did, the air just rushes in. Well, this thing flew right out of my hands and landed over in the corner. When I did, I turned around and one leg slipped out of that airplane. Well, I was in the airplane to my crotch, but this leg was out, hanging in the air. I thought, well, I got to get it back in, but I couldn't. The air was so tripped against my leg, I couldn't get it back. So when you're flying, you have throat mics that fasten on your throat. You don't have to hold on the pressure, you just talk. So I told the pilot what had happened. He said, well, stand by. He said, I'll bank it around. Well, when he banked it around, my leg released and I got right back in the plane.
Did you think you were going to fall out?
Yeah, I did then. I really did. But I didn't. And he told me to stand by to throw the target out. I did. But this target, this tow reel, was up above my head where the rest of them had been down in front of me. And they had long levers for brakes. This one had a turn handle. So I released it, and the cable starts going out with the target. And I had to put it out to 10,000 feet. So I'm turning this knob one way, and I'm slowing it down. I'm turning it one way, and I'm turning it the other. Pretty soon he told me, all right, he said, make her stationary. And I forgot which way I was turning that thing. Instead of shutting it off, I opened it wide open. All that cable went right out of it. Locked everything. I called him up and told him what I'd done. Boy, oh boy, I got cussed out there. He said, well, we turned the bait. So we went back in. And I got the devil because I'd done it wrong. My first trip out. But the next day, I was back on another plane and out again. And I flew for 2 years after.
Are you still in the same location, flying out of the same location?
No. I was in Brunswick, Maine when this started. And they have what they call detached duty. They send one airplane, 2 airplanes, half a dozen airplanes, different places. Well, my first detachment was Bermuda. I went down there. The squadron is called DJ-15.
How did you get there?
I went down on the destroyer, the USS De Haven out of Boston.
How long did it take you?
It took us 4 days because they missed the island. The navigator was a new man. He navigated wrong, and they went right by Bermuda, and we're halfway to England, and we had to turn around and back. So we got down there, and then they put us at the airspace. So I was in the ordnance department. I went there, and I got a bunk in the barracks. I was the first bunk in the barracks. They had an outdoor movie house by what we call the chow hall. So every night, each one of us would buy a fifth of whiskey. And we'd go over and sit and watch a movie and drink that fifth. Well, you'd be so drunk you couldn't walk home, so you'd crawl. You'd back and get in your bed.
What movies did you see? Do you remember any of them?
Honestly, I don't remember. Not now. Old time movies, I don't remember. Like Trail of the Lonesome Pine, I remember that. But I can't remember.
Okay.
And, well, we got, at the young age I got drinking pretty heavy. Now, you didn't drink on duty, but you drank when you were on off duty.
Yeah.
You drank. That's all there was to do was drink. There wasn't even there was no ladies on the island. There was no, there was one bar, which was very fancy. They were called Belmont Manor. So we certainly weren't welcome because it was an English colony, you know, for rich people. So we just buy a bottle, and I could buy a case of whiskey for $27, a whole case. And we just drink it whenever we could.
So what happened when you'd go back to the barracks?
Well, this one night I was telling you that a fellow, he was down there 6 months, that was our tour of duty, and he messed up, and he was there another 6. And he messed up, and he was there for his third 6 months. And he was drinking real heavy, a real nice fellow, Major, you're thinking. He got drunk, and he come in the barracks with a fire hose, knocked us out of our bunks. So we caught him. He went to sleep. We put him in his bunk. We picked the bunk up and we put it out on the runway. That night, the Army sent a squadron of B-17s headed for England. They came in and landed in Bermuda. Well, this guy was laying out on that runway where them planes landed. And how they ever missed him, I do not know. Honest to Lord, a B-17 is one huge airplane. And every one of them missed him.
Did you guys ever pull that prank again?
No, we didn't.
How long were you stationed in Bermuda?
The tour of duty was 6 months. And while I was down there, I got to know it was a yeoman. He was in charge of the office. And his bunk was right next to mine. One night he said to me, he said, "How long have you been in the service?" And I told him, board ship 2 years, I was in my 3rd year. He said, "Well, how come you ain't got a rate?" I said, "Well," I said, "did you ever see what you got to do to be an ordnanceman to get a rate?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I've looked." He said, "It'd take about 9 books you'd have to study and know by heart, and none of it pertains to what we're doing." It was all bomb sights, torpedoes, everything that I had nothing to do with. Here I am throwing targets. He says, "Have you got $50?" I said, "Sure, I got $50." He says, "You want to give it to me?" He says, "I'll take care of it." I said, "Sure." So I give him $50. That was in the middle of the month. Well, the end of the month, I was 3rd class petty officer. He put in all my tests, signed them, and turned them in, and I got rated 3rd class. 2nd class completed. I was ready for 2nd class for $50. That jumped my rate, my pay, probably $100 a month. So after that, I got transferred back to Brunswick. From Brunswick, I went to Quonset Point, Rhode Island. We towed out at Quonset Point, doing the same type of work. And while I was there, a girlfriend I had in Michigan was killed and murdered. And I was sent home to be at the funeral with her mother and dad, which I'd done. And I went back, and I got called back again to go to court to testify in her behalf that I had gone with her, and we'd gone together a couple of years. And I had very serious intentions at that time. They wouldn't let me go back. I was stopped. And we never knew how or why, but I never got back. And shortly after that, I got transferred. I went back to Brunswick. From Brunswick, I was shipped to New Bedford, Massachusetts. And I went down there with a couple other guys. We had 3 aircraft. And I was the ordnanceman on all 3 of them. Well, we towed targets for a while. At night, we all go out and date. We had a guy called Pop Sperling. We call him Popeye. A little humor to what we're talking about. He'd go out and get drunk. One night he come back pushing a wheelchair with a lady in it, and he kept her in the barracks for a week and a half in the wheelchair. And she was living with him in the barracks till he got caught, and they had to take her home. Things like that, and I got going with a gal. Her name was Irene. I got real serious. One day they come down, they said, they want you down the ordnance shack, we're going to tow a glider. So I went down there, and there was a 7-foot drone they had all made up. Told me what they wanted to do. They wanted to tow that. Instead of using targets, they wanted to use a regular model of an airplane. Well, how in the world are you going to get that thing off the ground? Well, you're going to drag it. You put your tow wheel and put your cable out about 300 feet. Then we'll drag tow it off the ground. Okay. So we done that. We hooked it up, got back in the plane, and away we went. So the thing followed us right off the ground, just beautiful. We got up in the air, and they told me to put it out to 10,000 feet. So I let the tow reel and the cable out to 10,000 feet behind the airplane. But what they didn't realize, they call it angle of dangle. This glider was so heavy it dropped about 3,000 feet underneath us. Well, we're towing it all right, but not behind us, we're towing beneath us. So we towed that 3 or 4 hours that day. We started to go back in, and the pilot says, reel that glider in. He says to 300 feet. So I turned the thing on, it wouldn't budge. You couldn't bring it back. The air pressure against that glider was so great, you couldn't tow it, couldn't get it back. And he says, I don't know what to do. The only thing you can do is go around that airport. I said, you make a pass up of about 5,000 or 6,000 feet. When this thing hits the ground, I'll cut it loose. That was a good idea. So he says, you're going to come around. He said, when you see that thing hit the ground, you cut her loose. So we come around, we come over this old farm, and all of a sudden I see that glider go into a guy's chicken coop. Chicken feathers and guts went for miles and miles. That was the end of that glider. We smashed the chicken, and the cable broke and it was all gone. So we landed, and here come the old farmer. He said, I want my money for my chickens and my chicken coop, and I want it right now. He said, we can't do that. We ain't got it. He said, you will pay me now before you get out of that airplane. He wouldn't let us out until they paid him. Shortly after that, I had a buddy, his name was C.R. Kopp from Ypsilanti, Michigan. He said to me, he said, Phil, you getting serious with that girl? I said, yeah. I said, I think I'm going to ask you to marry her. Well, about that time, there was a notice on our blackboard that they wanted ordnance men and strikers to go to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. I said, nah, I ain't doing that. I'm happy right here in the States, and I'll stay here. 2 days later, I got called up, I was transferred. I said, what do you mean I'm transferred? I said, I didn't have to go transfer. He said, well, you got it. And I was transferred to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, the Utility Squadron 60. When I landed down, well, first, on our way down there, we went to Miami. We were put in the Coronado Hotel in Miami. And I was in a room with 6 other men, bunks. And everybody went out and got drunk that night. And this one guy we called a Beast, another fellow's name was Walls. They got in a fight. And I was in my bunk trying to get some sleep. And one Walls hit the guy right in the forehead. And he went down, and what we didn't know, it killed him. So instead of letting us go on to our next base, we had to go into a general court-martial in Miami.
Okay, we left off. You said you were being sent down to the court-martial hearing?
I was in Miami, yeah, when a fellow was killed in there. He was hit in the forehead by another man and killed him. So we were held over. The crew I was sent with went on to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and I had to stay there. Within the next week, we were in several hearings, general court-martials. And when you appear, you got to be in full-dress uniform. And there's admirals, commodores, every type of officer you can think of on the board. And you sat in the witness chair, and you were only allowed to answer yes, sir, or no, sir. You cannot say one other word either way. They ask you the question, and you either say yes, sir, or no, sir. Well, when I was done, you go out, and it continued for another day or so, but the man that hit the fella got 10 years in Portsmouth prison, Navy prison. And then I was released, and I'm trying to think. Oh, I flew on another plane from Opalaca Airport in Miami to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. By this time, I'm a week and a half behind my boys that went down there with me. When I landed, a chief petty officer come to the landing strip. He said, "Are you Brockschmidt, the ordnance?" "Yes." He said, "Don't unpack, you're not staying here." "Where am I going?" He said, "We're transferring you to San Juan, Puerto Rico." And he said that there'll be 3 planes sent down there, and you'll be the second ordnance. Joe Klockner will be senior ordnance, and he's first class. He'll be number 1, and you'll be second. So we loaded our stuff in the planes. We flew out that night to San Juan, Puerto Rico, Naval Air Station. When we landed down there, they give us a barracks in with the other men that were there. Real nice barracks. And I was in a barracks with Bob Feller, the famous pitcher baseball. There was a real well-to-do country western man, but I cannot remember his name. Anyway, I was put on these planes, but as we went down, I noticed this first-class ordnanceman sat there next to me was perspiring just something awful. And it wasn't hot, and there was no need for that. I didn't understand it. Well, when we landed, he says, "I want to talk to you before we get into work tomorrow." I said, "Okay." Because he was my senior, he was ahead of me. He said, "Phil," he said, "I want you to know I'm scared to death to fly." He said, "I've been in 7 carrier crackups in the years I've been in the Navy." So I was a gunner on these fighters, and he said, "I'm scared to death to fly." He said, "I'll make you a deal." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Each one of us has to fly 4 hours a month to get our extra pay, which is 70% of your base pay." He said, "You fly all the hours. You log in the first 4 for me. You log in all the rest for yourself." He said, "I'll do all the groundwork. You won't have to do a thing." He said, "Anything broke or busted or needs fixing, I'll do it all." He said, "When you land, you're free time." So I flew down there for 6 months, 2 hours a day. That's all I ever done. And he done all the rest of it.
What'd you do in the meanwhile?
Went to town, had fun.
Same daily routine as everywhere else? Get up early in the morning?
No, it wasn't even that there because we were stationed by ourselves. We had nothing to do with the base. And if I had a flight at 10 o'clock, I just had to be down there prepared to go on that flight at 10. If it was at 7 in the morning, I went for that. If it was at midnight, I was ready at midnight. So whenever your plane was scheduled to go and what officers you had, that's where you went.
How long were you stationed here?
I was in San Juan 6 months. And they discharged, this time the war was winding down. It was time for all the reserves and the guys to be discharged. And my tour of duty counted for, I was to be in the service the duration of the war plus 6 months. Well, it wasn't quite 6 months when they called us up, and I had all the points you need to be discharged. In fact, I was in the first wave, but they said, you have to have a man come down and relieve you, and then we'll discharge you. Well, no reliefs came. And finally, they said, well, we can't relieve you guys, so we've decided to disband the squadron. It is no more. Then they give us papers, and they sent me back to Opalaca Airport in Miami. And they said, when you get there, it's up to you to make your own way to the Great Lakes of Chicago, Illinois. Or you can get there any way you can. Then you'll be discharged and sent home. So we partied pretty hard because we were out. Service was over. We were done. We were getting ready to go home.
Had the war officially ended then?
Yes.
How did you hear about the war ending?
Oh, I can't remember. Radio, I imagine. That's where we usually got everything. But your squadron kept up to date on it.
So how'd you end up getting home to the Great Lakes?
We were in Miami and we was all partying pretty good. And I met an Army guy there and I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to Chicago." I said, "How are you getting there?" He said, "Well, there's a troop train pulling out here tonight for Chicago, Illinois." I said, "Man, there's 6 of us guys. We got to get to the Great Lakes. Come on," he said, "get in with us. Ain't nobody going to know it." So we got in with this whole bunch of Army guys and we went with them. We got to Chicago, we hitchhiked out to the Great Lakes. And then they started to process us for discharge. And they made us all kind of promises and different things they were going to do. And they'd give us, we'd sign over. So I said, "No, I'll go home. If I want to sign over, I'll let you know later." Well, I never did. I went back.
So how'd you get home from there, from Chicago?
How did I get home from there? I took a train.
Did they send you right away?
No, you were there probably a couple of weeks.
What'd you do during this time?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Because when I went home, my mother and dad didn't even know I was coming home.
What day did you get back home?
Well, I got out of the service December the 11th. So I was probably...
December the 11th of...
During December I was home for Christmas.
How old were you when you got home?
Well, let's see, I was 15 when in. I turned 16 that month. Between 18 and 19. And I'll tell you another thing that happened when I got home. The orders were for every man that was discharged to report to the draft board. Well, I had never been to the draft board. A lot of guys were drafted in the service and they'd been there, you know. So I went to the draft board in Grand Rapids. And this elderly lady looked at me and she said, "How old are you?" And I told her. She says, "You were drafted in the Navy?" I said, "No, I enlisted." I said, "I enlisted myself. I'm discharged. Here's my discharge paper. I'm out of the service." She said, "That can't be." I said, "Well, I can be." She said, "You ain't old enough." She said, "We got you down here. We got your birthday and everything." She says, "You're up for the draft this month." I said, "Well, I ain't going to no draft." She said, "Yes, you are." She said, "We're going to draft you in the Army." I said, "I ain't going to no Army. I just put my time in the Navy. I'm out. I'm done." "Oh, no," she said. She said, "But I'll tell you what. You go home in 2 weeks. I want you back here." I said, "Okay." So I went home, stayed with my folks. 2 weeks I went back to the draft board and she said to me, "Young man," she said, "you're right, you were in the Navy." She said, "I checked." She said, "I went back through all the records." She said, "Now I'm going to tell you just what to do." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You go back to high school and finish high school." And later on I did. I completed 12 years of high school. But I done that at Ferris Institute in Big Rapids. The only other thing I might have forgot was I spent 4 to 6 months in Floyd Bennett Field in New York City. Told targets there for the fleet. And while I was there, we were close to the fence of the base. And we kept watching planes land and take off, land and take off. And they done it with a big Army bomber. And we couldn't figure out what the heck they were doing. And later on, we found out it was Jimmy Doolittle training the boys for the invasion of Japan. And they had to land in enough space to be on an aircraft carrier and take off in that aircraft carrier. And that's what they were training there for, was to take off of that carrier with a full bomb load. And they went into Tokyo, bombed Tokyo. And they had to go out through China. After they dropped their bombs, they were all on their own. They had to get back the best way they could. They didn't have enough fuel to get back. So that whenever they ditched their plane, they had to plan on the people helping them to get out. Some did, some didn't. One of them was Ed McMahon, who was on the program with Johnny Carson. He flew one of those bombs.
Is there anything else? What was probably one of the most memorable experiences of the war?
I guess, well,
what sticks out in your mind the most?
I guess when we first got torpedoes going into Bermuda, I was a young kid, 16 years old. got in the Mermat with my 16th birthday, and I was scared to death. And it was 40 below zero and snow and cold, and I was homesick. I thought the world would come to an end about that.
You didn't have any trouble getting off the ship?
How do you mean? In the
Bailing
water?
out?
Oh,
Yeah.
no. You had plenty of time, but you got off into oil. You had to be careful that oil didn't catch on fire.
Now, being a sailor, sailors tend to have a lot of sayings and a lot of rhymes. Are there any you can remember off the top of your head?
Not clean ones, no. They're very bad.
That's okay. Give us an example of one.
Well, there was one, what's that again? I hate to say it, but I do. It was at a ball I met her, and I asked her for a dance, and she knew I was a sailor, the way I wore my pants. My shoes were nicely polished, my hair was neatly combed, and when the ball was over, I asked her to take her home. It was in her father's hallway, where Reed was forced to stay, but in her mother's bedroom, she was forced to lay. Oh, I laid her down so gently, and I lifted her dress so high, and I said, "Now, dear maiden, you take it or you die. So listen, all fair maidens, and listen close to me. Don't ever trust a sailor an inch above your knee. He'll say that he will love you, he'll say that he'll be true. But when you get your charity, he'll say, the hell with you." That ain't very nice. You shouldn't put that on tape.
Is there anything else you remember?
Oh, I don't know. There was so many stuff. I can't remember right now. Sitting there. I had one experience aboard an oil tanker. We was in Trinidad in the British West Indies. We was at anchor. And I had known a Norwegian boy, young fellow about 21 years old, blonde-haired, good-looking young man. I got to be a buddy with him, talking to him all the time. He was a quartermaster of the ship. And this was all merchantmen, where we were Navy gunners. So I said, I'd like to learn to be a quartermaster. And I was steering the ship, boxing the compass, all this type of thing. He said, well, good. He said, I'd be glad to teach you. So I stood my watch one night, midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning. Wayne Rastick and I stood our watch. Went in and went to bed. And about 4:30, this guy comes in and wakes me up. I said, hey, come on. He said, you want to be a quartermaster? I said, yeah. Come on. So I'll show you the first duty. Okay. So we get up and go out on deck. He's got the American flag all rolled up. He said, okay, put her up. So I fastened it onto the rope, pulled her up in the air, and never once did I look at it. No. Got it all up, made it secure, and went in and went to bed. And I hadn't laid down a half an hour, and I heard the awfulest commotion. Sirens and whistles, ship's horns, everything just blowing all over. We all jumped up, went out on deck. Here come the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, all coming out to the ship. Everybody standing looking up in the air. I looked up, and there's the American flag put up upside down. This is a distress signal. Ship's in dire distress. Well, everybody from the port came out. What's the matter? And they got down to I put the flag up, upside down. Well, this guy had folded it on purpose for me to do that. And I got the blame for it. I got 30 days restriction to the ship. I couldn't get off. Guys were on liberty, I couldn't go. But that was the end of my being a quartermaster. I never done that again. It was just one item. Had one, I was in Bahia, not Bahia, Pará, Brazil. We went up the Amazon, 150 miles, and we anchored. The little town there was called Pará, Belém, Pará. And they give us all liberty. So we all went in. We had all kinds of money because we never spent any money aboard the ship. You didn't make a lot, but what you had, you still had it because you didn't spend it. We all went ashore and we all got drunk and we had dinner, we done everything. And about midnight I went back to the dock where you get on a little boat to go back out to your ship. when I come back, our officer come down. His name was Hoffman. And he says, he was drunk too, by the way. He was stoned out of good. And he said, Brockschmidt, he said, I bought all this stuff. And he just had tons of stuff he bought as souvenirs. He said, I want you to stay right here and watch it till I get back. So I sat there and the boat come and go back to the ship. I thought, what the hell, I don't have to do this. So I got on the boat and went back to the ship. And I left all the stuff there. Well, when he come back, it was all stolen. There was nothing left. So he come out the ship and I was sound asleep with a hangover. He woke me up. And the shore patrol come and grabbed me, handcuffed me, and took me back ashore. They took me to a place with a naval attaché's office. They locked me in a radio room. It was about 6 by 6, just full of radios. Radios for shortwave all over the world. I stayed and finally an officer came in, he says, Bill, what happened? I said, I was down the dock on Liberty. And I said, oh, came down and told me to stand watch over his stuff, and he left. I said, the hell with that, and I went back and went to bed. He said, you didn't have to stand watch over his stuff. I said, that's not right. He said, what else is going on in that ship? I said, well,